Hello, Dragon Folk, and welcome to the very, very scuffed camera edition of Ashen Wings, reviewing the new Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate deck leak. Let's check him out. Welcome, everybody. It's time, right? I'm doing this very last minute, and I hope everybody kind of understands where I'm going at, but I wanted to kind of go over the new Commander Legends Commander Precons that are coming out. So we're going to go over and see what exactly is happening here. Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate is the second set in the Commander Legends, thing. And Battle for Baldur's Gate, if you've seen my other video, which hopefully I'll remember to put a little thingy up in somewhere in the corner or whatever. But, so what is happening, right, is everybody is apparently freaking out, right? So not only is Battle for Baldur's Gate, now officially every card has been leaked. The set comes out in like 10 days as of recording this video. So it's just about time. People are getting hyped. There's pre-releases this weekend, so on and so forth. But what we're going to go over is the precons, right? Now, precons for New Capenna were a pretty big deal because you had the Obscura Operations. And Obscura Operations had things like, what was that, Smuggler's Warehouse? I want to say that's what that was. Smuggler's Share? Oh man, I forgot what the name of the card was. Anyway, editing me will fix that. So, that card went for like $40 for a little while, and a deck itself goes for like $41, $42, roughly, on average. So, usually when there's a big spike in price per deck, a lot of people think this is their get-rich-quick scheme of just buying the decks, cracking them open, selling the singles, and then being fine with it, right? Whereas most people who are intelligent, they just buy the deck, right? Because if you spend $50 to get a $40 card, you get a $40 card and 99 other cards that are also worth something. So there'd be no reason for you to just buy the singles that you want. You could just buy the whole deck because they're MSRP priced, right? So the only time this ever is a problem, or is a thing, is when these precons go out of print and you can't find them anymore. That's the only time in which it's like, oh no, we're going to have to buy the singles. But that's totally fine. If financial stuff aside, Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate Precon lists have been released. So we're going to go over them. We're going to go over the cards that have been introduced into Commander Legends and kind of look over them. And we're going to kind of look at the generalized pricing of each of these cards if you were to buy them in single. Now, let me be very clear that I am reviewing these decks 10 days before their release. If you haven't seen any of my other videos or you don't know the motto of this channel yet, it's that you don't buy cards on pre-sale ever, right? If you wanted to buy a set of all four of these decks, which I think is only going for like $130 right now, good call, right? $130 for all four of these decks. You get them, you're going to have a fun time playing them in the precon and so on and so forth, and you can use them in tournaments, yada yada. Great time. But make sure to understand that when it says that the tabletop version of this deck is $217.28, the prices are very inflated right now. So do not worry, right? The deck is still only going to cost like $45 MSRP. So at Walmarts and Targets and GameStops and so on and so forth. And then if you wait like a year, maybe like a year and a half, they tend to be 50% off. So not even a year. What did AFR came out when? AFR came out Q2 of last year. So yeah, about a year. About a year. They end up being 50% off. So super cheap. Don't worry about trying to like do anything crazy, but more importantly, don't buy overpriced products. If the product costs more, if you go on TCG Player and the product costs more than MSRP, which is what they would sell it for in a big box store or anything of the sort, don't buy it. Don't buy an overpriced thing. It's going to come back down without a doubt. So, we're going to go over the first deck here, which is the white-black deck called Party Time. So, Party Time's commander is this card right here, Nalia d'Arnis. I don't know if you can get a kind of good look at her, but she essentially says that you can look at the top card of your library at any time, may cast a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard spell from the top of your library, and then at the beginning of your combat of your turn, if you have a full party, which includes a rogue, cleric, warrior, and wizard, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain death touch until end of turn. This is the commander for that. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of wild. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty insane. This is the first time I've actually seen anything party-centric in the game. Party stuff started coming out in Zendikar Rising, which was like 2 years ago. And I always thought that when AFR came out, that it was going to be this big mesh of things, and you're able to make this sick standard deck of party stuff. But we never saw it. So this is a white-black version of a party deck, right? It contains a bunch of priests, wizards, warriors, and clerics. Or did I say priests? What did I say? I said priests. Cleric, rogues, warriors, and wizards, right? Because the whole point of this deck is to get all four, or at least close to four, out all at the same time. So, some of the cards in question are going for a lot. For instance, this commander that is $40, right? Don't get me wrong, very strong commander, but $40, that's like the price of the deck. So this price is definitely going to go down. What I imagine is going to go up, though, is her extended art card, which I'm sure we're going to be getting in Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. So when you crack open collector booster packs, you have a chance of finding her in a extended art. And that's probably going to go for a lot. So I'm going to kind of just touch over the cards that are a little bit more expensive, roughly about over $2, just to kind of get an idea, because if it's over $2, they're generally the big cards that make this deck run really well. So, Party Time, we've already got Nalia. Nalia, definitely a very, one generic, a white and a black. Very, very, very good commander. I definitely suggest using her as your commander. But I'm sure there's other good ones in here too. So, Mother of Runes gets a print in here. Just a general idea, gain protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. This allows you to kind of protect your creatures. So that way, if you get a buff from having all four in your party on the board, and somebody tries to destroy your wizard, right? You can just tap this to kind of block their ability, stop their tricks or whatever. The next card we have here is the Deep Known Terramancer, which is a new card that was just introduced in this set, in this commander set, right? So it's got Flash, and it has Mold Earth. It's a 2/2 for 2, or 2/2 for 1 white, 1 generic. Whenever one or more lands enter the battlefield under an opponent's control without being played, you may search your library for a Plains card. Put it onto the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. Do this only once each turn. So essentially, if your opponent ramps, you ramp. And that's kind of the bigger thing. Because if it enters the battlefield under an opponent's control without it being played, which means it can't be played from the hand, playing a land is, you can only do once per turn. But if you have things like, what's that card? Vastwood Surge. I want to say Vastwood Surge is the card where you sacrifice, or no, that's Roiling Regrowth. I'm getting used to having my bank of knowledge in here be expanded. But anyway, one of them, you essentially can sacrifice a land to then take 2 lands from your deck, 2 basic lands from your deck, and put them onto the battlefield tapped. So if that were to ever happen, you also can search your library for a Plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. What this means is that white has ramp, and that's kind of insane. You can only do it once each turn, so like you can't go crazy with it, but white has ramp. And I don't know too many cards that give white ramp, so that's kind of insane, especially for 2. But of course it dies to removal, so like, whatever happens, right? The next card is 8.5 Tails. This is an old card from Champions of Kamigawa, I think. That's what that is. Target permanent you control gains protection from white until end of turn. Target spell or permanent becomes white until end of turn. So that allows you to kind of change things around as far as like color identity. But a 2/2 for 2 white, I'm sure it's got its uses there. For instance, there are some cards that do extra damage to cards that are green. Like a red card that it's like a card that does 2 damage to a creature, but if that creature's green, it deals 6 or 5 or something. So this might be a way to kind of like change your stuff. And then we're going to kind of move on a little bit. Selfless Spirit. Flying, sacrifice Selfless Spirit. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. That's a pretty good way to kind of avoid board wipes. It's a good way to kind of go on in and attack without needing to worry about your creatures dying, right? Very cool stuff. Love to see that. What else do we have in here for the creatures? Harper Recruiter. This is another card that a lot of people are talking about. Whenever Harper Recruiter attacks, this is one of the newer cards from what do you call it? See if I can just get it here. Yeah. Whenever Harper Recruiter from Commander Legends, Battle for Baldur's Gate. I'm just gonna say Baldur's. I think when I'm referring to Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, I'm just gonna start using Baldur's Gate, because saying that whole thing all the time is kind of wild. It's got flying, and then whenever Harper Recruiter attacks, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a cleric card, a rogue card, a warrior card, and or a wizard card from among them, and put those cards into your hand. Put the rest to the bottom of your library in a random order. So, what that means is you can reveal all 4. If you happen to draw a cleric, a rogue, a warrior, and a wizard in your top 4 cards, you can reveal all of them and put it in your hand, if I'm reading that correctly, which is kind of insane. But regardless, you get to search your library for more of your party cards, and that's very important. So, very good. It's got flying too. It's not very strong. It's got 1 toughness, but it's all right. What else do we have here? Order of White Clay. This is a 1 white for 1/4. And then you can pay 1 and then a 2 white to tap this. I'm sorry, is that... Yeah, untap. That's untap it. So you can pay 1 and then 2 white to untap it, and then return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to play. Now that's kind of wild, because essentially that means that you can use him to attack, and then you can untap him afterwards, which is kind of nuts. So, very interesting concept to see. Not many people are going to realize that that's the untapped symbol. Luckily, they have it in there. But, wow. Converting mana cost 3 or less from your grave. This is going to be a pretty strong deck. Because a lot of the cards that are warriors and clerics and wizards and rogues are all probably going to be low-cost creatures. So that way you can get a bunch of low-cost party members on the board to then buff them all. So, if I were to guess. But that's very, very good. Very good. Grim Hireling. This card was just reprinted in the AFR Adventures in the Forgotten Realms commander set. But they're giving it back here again. Whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, create 2 treasure tokens. There's a reason this card's $10. Crazy, crazy good. Because you can just... Rogues tend to have an ability where they can bypass blockers. They can just not be blocked. And that's really good. Sacrifice X treasures. You can pay 1 black, sacrifice X treasures. Target creature gets -X until the end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. So, not only do you make 2 treasure tokens when 1 or more creatures deal combat damage to a player, but you also have a kill spell that you can activate only as a sorcery, but you have a kill spell that you can use for 1 black, and it's kind of nuts. So, definitely very, very good. The next card is a white card, Jazal Goldmane. This looks like an older card from a different commander set. First strike. You can pay 3 and 2 white. Attacking creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of attacking creatures. So this is kind of a go wide and then hit face kind of deal. And hopefully you can do something with that, but seems very interesting. Seems like you can do the trick for sure. Then you have Direfleet Ravager. Menace, Death Touch. When Direfleet Ravager enters the battlefield, each player loses a third of his or her life rounded up. Now that's kind of crazy for 5. And more importantly, you could also... Granted, it affects you as well, but it is pretty powerful, I must say. So... There's another card here that I am not seeing. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, okay. Calculating Lich. Whenever a creature attacks one of your opponents, that player loses 1 life. So anytime opponents attack an opponent, it loses 1 life. One of the things you have to think about when you buy these commander decks, right? And it's not a lot of stuff people know about when they first start playing commander. But commander is traditionally a 4-player format. So when they say things like this, right, whenever a creature attacks one of your opponents, that player loses 1 life. Which means that, let's say Jim over here wants to attack, Tim, right? Jim wants to attack Tim, and I have Calculating Lich on the board. Even though I'm not attacking Tim, he will still lose 1 life. Because this guy's on the board. So, kind of crazy. This is one of those political cards, but it is a wizard, so wizards are kind of neat. Then on to the last of these guys. Yeah, it doesn't look like much else. A lot of it is probably going to be things like this. Shapeshifter cards. Shapeshifter cards can be played as anything. They are every creature type, I should say. And so because they are every creature type, they count as clerics, rogues, wizards, and warriors. So it looks like a lot of stuff, though, to like drain the life of your opponent. Seems to be the concept here. A lot of flyers, a lot of things like that. There was a creature in here that I wanted to see. I don't know why I didn't go over it. I gotta find him. Mikaeus the Lunarch is in here. Enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. So you pay 1 white and then X. You can tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on Mikaeus, or you can tap it to remove a +1/+1 counter from Mikaeus, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. So very big, go wide, get big, go in for the kill kind of deal. That seems to be the entire purpose of this deck. There is, though, a card. I'm gonna see if I have to. I'm gonna find it. Hold on. I'm gonna find it for you guys. Sorry for the very, very scuffed release of all this. This guy, Barakos Party Leader, who he doesn't have a price next to him. That's probably for a good reason. So Barakos Party Leader, what he does, or they, them, I don't know. Barakos Party Leader is also a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard. So it is all of these, which means that in order to get a full party buff, like you get with your commander, Nalia, you just need to have this one on the board, which is kind of insane. And then when Barakos attacks, defending player loses X life and you create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of creatures in your party. And if you choose to have this guy as your background, which you can only do if you take out all the white cards of this deck, you can have a background as a second commander. So I would keep this in the 99, obviously. But it is everything, right? Much like with the changelings, how they are also everything. This is everything. Also a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard. So kind of important for the deck's usage, because you get more and more stuff based off that, right? Like, where are you? Malakir Blood Priest? Yeah. Malakir Blood Priest enters the battlefield. Each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures in your party. So 4 is the highest amount. So you can play this for 2, and then deal 4 damage to each opponent, and then you gain 4 life. Crazy. Some other cards of note: Savine's Reclamation. Return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was cast from the graveyard, because it has flashback, you may copy this spell and may choose new targets for the copy. So this is to help bring stuff back from the grave to help complete your party. Kind of a generalized concept of the deck. Skull Clamp, an artifact equipment for the deck. Each equipped creature gets +1/+1, and then when it dies, draw 2 cards. So you could even equip this onto your opponent's creatures. Or yeah, I think that's the point. You can equip it onto your opponent's creatures for 1. And if they have only 1 toughness and you equip it onto them, they'll die. And then when they die, you draw 2 cards. So very interesting concept of like using your opponent's stuff against you. So, obviously, comes with a Soul Ring, Skada, and an Arcane Signet, under the new art for Arcane Signet. Then it also comes with a Talisman of Hierarchy. Looks like these talismans are getting introduced here again. You can you can tap it to add a colorless mana, or you can tap it to add white or black. Talisman of Hierarchy deals 1 damage to you if you choose the specific color. So, pretty important, but it is a very good mana rock. Maskwood Nexus is a card that came out of Kaldheim, reprinted through this. Creatures you control are every creature type, so this is important because you essentially have, you can make all of your creatures party. You can essentially fill your party to max with just this card on the board. Same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. And then you can pay 3 and tap this artifact to create a 2/2 blue shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. It's just a good card for this deck. It allows everything in here to be everything, and that's just kind of really good. Definitely going to be a card to look for in the main hand to start, and then kind of start going from there. So, very, very good. Because it can also turn your commander into everything. So, it's wild. Enchantments, right? Folk Hero is an enchantment that just came out. This is the legendary enchantment background that comes in here. You don't need to use it with a creature that has choose a background. It is still just a legendary enchantment, and you can just use it as an enchantment. But commander creatures you own have, whenever you cast a spell that shares a creature type with this creature, draw a card. The ability triggers with only once each turn. So if you do this, Maskwood Nexus, and you have this on the board, right? Then every creature you play, when you have Nalia out, comes down as everything. And because it comes down as everything, it shares a creature type with Nalia. And if it shares a creature type with Nalia, you get to draw a card. So card draw in white, again, not something that they had seen a lot of in the past, but the support is coming pretty heavy for white. So kind of cool to see here. No price on it yet, but we'll definitely see where it goes. Black Market Connections is a big card that's being used right now. Essentially what this card is, I'll kind of bring it up here. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, choose one or more. So your first main phase. You can sell contraband, you get to create a treasure token and you lose a life. You can buy information, draw a card, and you lose 2 life. Or you can hire a mercenary, which creates a 3/2 colorless shapeshifter creature token with changeling, and you lose 3 life. So for 3 life, you can summon a creature. For 2 life, you can draw a card. For 1 life, you can create a treasure token. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase. Every turn, as long as that's on the board. Pretty wild. You don't have to do these things. Actually, I'm a liar. Choose one or more. So you can do all 3, right? But they are going to cost you something. So having this out is definitely going to start costing you life at some point. So kind of be careful with it, but it does allow you to kind of blow the board up in perspective. Get yourself treasure tokens to cast any kind of spells. Draw a card to make sure you have something in hand. Very good. Fear's Retribution, card from Kaldheim. That's a 45-cent card, but the Saga is fantastic. Allows you to get a bunch of angels and stuff. Really, really good. Now for the lands, the big expensive lands you get out of here is Castle Locthwain, which enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp. You can tap it to add black, or you can pay 1 and 2 black to tap this and draw a card. Then you lose life equal to the number of cards in your hand. Card draw on land, very, very strong. You do lose life, but if you are dead drawing, it's going to be worth the hit because you're going to want stuff in your hand. Obviously comes with Command Tower because you got to have it. Mutavault being reprinted in this set. Mutavault is huge in some stuff for tribal decks in general. With this being a deck that is technically Shapeshifter Tribal, trying to be kind of everything all at once. This kind of fits. It is a reprint, though, of a pretty powerful card used in a lot of tribal decks, especially in some tribal decks that are in Pioneer as well. So, very, very powerful. But, we're kind of going over it and double-checking it, and yeah, Mutavault's great. You can tap it to add a colorless to your mana pool, or you can pay 1 generic, and Mutavault becomes a 2/2 creature with all creature types until the end of turn. It's still a land. Mutavault, if I recall correctly, was the replacement for Faceless Haven in decks because people were not able to do the Book of Exalted Deeds trick on Faceless Haven anymore. So they turned to Mutavault, and Mutavault comes into play as a creature. You use the Book of Exalted Deeds ability to give it the counter that allows you to not lose the game. And then as long as your opponent can't kill a land, can't destroy land, you're pretty much set. So hopefully they added something in here to help with that. Other than that, there's also Vaults of the Archangel. You can add 1 to your mana pool, or you can pay 2, a white and a black to tap this, and creatures you control gain Death Touch and Lifelink until the end of turn. Very powerful land. Very powerful. For 4. Pretty crazy powerful. So, very good. And then War Room, you can pay 3, tap this to pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity, and draw a card. So you'd be paying 2 life, because there's 2 colors in her color identity, and then you get to draw a card. Other than that, it's obviously a lot of cards, right, to kind of go over, right? We're 30 minutes in, and we've only gone over 1 deck, right? So that's kind of an idea for this one. Kind of going over everything in regards to it. I'll probably go deeper into the deck, the actual deck reveal, when I have it in my hands. But for right now, this is just me kind of giving an idea of how these work. So, we're just going to keep it going. Hopefully, we'll keep it a little bit quicker by the next one. So, like I said, Exit from Exile, or Party Time, very much so party-oriented, buffing your low creatures, giving them +1/+1 counters, giving them lifelink and death touch, and drawing cards and protecting your creatures from spells. It seems like a pretty well-rounded deck. Although I'm sure if your opponent has something crazy, I mean, I think the only thing that might even hurt this deck, and just because I haven't looked at every single card, I think the only thing that might hurt this deck is Double Strike, maybe even First Strike. But I think our boy here, never mind. One of these cards has First Strike. Can't remember which one it is, but yeah. Kind of wild, so just stuff to keep in mind. A lot of things going on with this one, but definitely I think this is a great pickup, honestly. I love playing Orzhov, so it's very good. Exit from Exile. So, this one, also, you can see $39.99 for the commander. Doesn't make any sense. Exit from Exile is a Gruul deck. So it is red and green. So ramp and big damage and big creatures usually is the stuff to do here. Let's read what the commander is supposed to do. Faldorn Dreadwolf Herald. Whenever you cast a spell from exile or a land enters the battlefield under your control from exile, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. You can then pay 1 and tap this card to discard a card. Exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So I'm assuming a lot of this is you're going to want to play Faldorn, tap Faldorn to discard a card, and then exile the top card, hope it's a land, and then get a wolf out of it. Seems kind of interesting. It seems like a lot of here nor there stuff. I'm sure there are cards that prevent cards from going into exile, so it's probably something to think about. Let's see. Green Slime, Nalia the Blade Reforged. I'm just going to kind of pull up all these cards. Urabrask the Hidden getting a reprint in this set. Kind of interesting. 2 Planeswalkers, Vivian Champion of the Wild and Xenagos the Reveler. Also very interesting stuff. A Nature's Lore reprint. A 3 Visits reprint. A Jeska's Will reprint. Not something I expected to see. Not something I expected to see at all. Wow. Okay. Azuria's Predation. And then just kind of your regular artifacts. Stolen Strategy. A big card out of here. Any big lands? It doesn't look like a lot of the land cycle actually got a good hit here. It just seems a lot of the big cards are kind of in the creature slot. So... And of course the spells. So very interesting. So Green Slime is a new card that came out with this specific commander deck. It's got Flash, and when Green Slime enters the battlefield, counter target activated or triggered ability from an artifact or enchantment source. If a permanent's ability is countered this way, destroy that permanent. And you can foretell it. You can foretell it for a green, or you can foretell it. You can pay 2 generic to foretell the card and put it in exile, and then you can cast it for its foretell cost during your next turn. So that's pretty cool because it's got Flash, so you can essentially just keep this in exile until your opponent tries to activate an artifact or an enchantment, and then you can pop this bad boy down, hope it doesn't get countered, and then you can destroy their enchantment. Pretty good. Nalia the Blade Reforged. It's a 2 and a red for a 2/2. Spirit Warrior, a legendary creature. It has haste. Whenever Nalia the Blade Reforged attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Whenever you exile 1 or more cards from your library and or your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Nalia. So very cool. You're obviously going to want, if she's on the board, you're going to want to exile cards, because if you exile cards, that will make it so she's able to, you know, get big, as one would say. Very, very good card. Very good. Urabrask the Hidden, like I said, getting a reprint. This is not the Urabrask from New Capenna that was just released. This is the Urabrask from way back when. Creatures you control have haste. Creatures your opponent controls enter the battlefield tapped. It's a huge upset. I mean, obviously, it's going to probably be killed almost immediately. But while it's on the board, even if it gets to just survive one turn, creatures your opponent control enter the battlefield tapped. Your opponent kind of has to take a break and pull back from that. So, very strong, very powerful, and your creatures you have haste. I mean, like, popping all those wolves down and all that stuff, going to be worth it for sure. Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, is the Vivian from War of the Spark. So, pretty basic, small stuff. You can cast creature spells as though they had flash, and then until your next turn, up to one target creature gains vigilance and reach for the +1 loyalty. For -2 loyalty, you can look at the top 3 cards of your library, exile one face down, and put the rest in the bottom of the library in any order. For as long as it remains exiled, you may look at the card and you may cast it if it's a creature spell. So, pretty solid concept. Again, exiling cards is what you're going to want to do in this deck, and then exiling them gets a buff to all your stuff that you already have on the board, and then you also get to cast it from that exile. Then it goes to Reveler, another Planeswalker. This one's from Theros, though. He comes in with a 3 loyalty counter for 4. +1 can add X mana in any combination of red and or black, where X is the number of creatures you control. Pretty powerful if you're wide. If you have like 6 creatures on the board, you can +1 this to get like 3 red and 3 green, which is insane. So there's that. 0 creates a 2/2 red and green Satyr creature token with haste, and then you can -6 it to exile the top 7 cards of your library. You may put any number of creature and or land cards from among them onto the battlefield. So as long as you're not playing spells, as long as you didn't pull any spells, you can just slap that stuff right onto the board. Very powerful. You get the exile effect, which buffs your creatures, and then you just get to slam stuff into the board from exile. Very powerful. So, very, very cool. Nature's Lore. It's at about $3. You can search your library for a forest card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So, ramp in general. It's just good. Revisit, search your library for a forest card, put that card into the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Same deal. It's literally a Nature's Lore, but a different name. So that's a thing. Ramp will always be pretty expensive, just simply because it's necessary in decks, especially if it's cheap ramp. Jessica's Will. This is a card that was reprinted. It looks like it was reprinted in Commander Legends, but it was like expensive. I mean, Commander Legends reprint was $17.75, so you can see here it goes for quite a bit. And you can just choose one. If you control Commander, you can cast it as you cast the spell. You may choose both. You can add red for each card in target opponent's hand, and then you can exile the top 3 cards of your library, and you may play them this turn. So for 2 generic and a red, and your Commander on the board, you can essentially add up to, I mean, if your opponent's playing a deck that has multiple cards in their hand, more than 7, you get all that red mana to do whatever you want with. And then you also get to exile the top 3 cards of your library, and you can play them this turn. So you can use all that mana that you got from this, and you can spend them on cards that you exiled. So, pretty good. It's crazy to see a reprint in here for that. Interesting. Urizi's Predation. This is a $2 card, it looks like, so it just beats the mark. But for each creature your opponent controls, create a 4/4 green beast creature token. Each of those beasts fights a different one of those creatures. So if you have your opponent has a bunch of like 2/2 creatures, let's say they Scoot Swarm you, and they get like a bunch of 2/2 nasty, dumb creatures, you can play Urizi's Predation, and you can get a 4/4 green beast creature for each one, and then they all fight one another. So that's a win. It might not work out too well for things that are like, big giant dragons or whatever, but Not too bad. Stolen Strategy is a battle bond card. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of each opponent's library. And then until the end of the turn, you may cast spells from among those exiled cards, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So you can cast spells, spells specific, right? Everything that is a spell is like sorceries and instants and so on and so forth. So you can't just, I don't believe you can play your opponent's lands, but you can spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast them. So even if you're not of the same color identity, you can still use it. Very, very strong. So I can see why this card's $12. So that is Exit from Exile. I'm sure there's some cards. Duran of the Yawning Portal. Yeah, let's look at the cards that don't have dollar values next to them. This is the only one. This is another one of the new ones. Whenever Durnan attacks, he's got 3 generic, 1 green for 3/3. Whenever Durnan attacks, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may exile a creature card from among them. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may cast it. The spell has Undaunted. It costs 1 less to cast for each opponent. So if you're playing in a 4-man commander setting, as most people will, it'll cost 3 less generic mana to cast, which is kind of crazy. So, very cool. Very cool. I can see that definitely being a very, very strong thing. So, that is Exit from Exile. The entire deck looks like, if you bought it all from singles, $143. The number's going to change when everything is printed, obviously, so don't go crazy. But it is a good, valuable deck, right? Draconic Descent. Or Draconic Descent. Or Descent? It is Descent. Looks like the deck is going for $250 for buying all the singles. And I'm assuming it is blue-red dragons. So your commander here is Furkrag, Cunning Instigator. You're flying in haste. Whenever one or more dragons you control attack an opponent, goad target creature that player controls. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, if that creature had to attack this combat, you put a +1/+1 counter on Furkrag, Cunning Instigator, and you draw a card. Essentially, what I'm seeing is that this guy allows your opponent's creatures to have to fight other people, and if they don't fight, right, they have to fight because they're goaded, and then when they do fight, this guy gets a +1/+1 counter, and you draw a card. So, kind of neat. Kind of stops people from, like, sitting back and doing the long game, right? So, a very interesting thing. And so this deck is blue-red. Blue-red is not normally a what do you call it? A color combination that I often play. But, you know, I do like dragons. I do like decks that revolve around dragons. So I'm always willing to give it a shot and see exactly what kind of what I can get up to, right? So it looks like most of these are probably going to be pretty expensive, strictly on the fact that they are dragons. I know dragons just in general, kind of like how it is with like with like a Blue Eyes White Dragon and Yu-Gi-Oh. Like dragons are just something people like, and so because they are wanted, because they're wanted, they tend to have their prices a little bit higher. So I'm just going to keep all this going. I'm going to keep uploading. Doesn't look like there's big stuff in artifact section. Talismans and such. Dragon stuff. Nothing too crazy here. Midnight Clock, I'm not sure why. Maybe just to bring everything back into there. Curse of Opulence. Artificer class, which I think is new. Yeah, that's a new card. Propaganda. Loot Dispute, another new card. And then the lands, you have Castlevantrus, which is a pretty powerful one. A lot more cards in here that are worth something than than that exit from exile. Reliquary Tower, we don't really have to go over. It is a $4 card, but generally you get the idea. Terrain Generator is new, though, to me. So we'll go over Bothersome Quasit, which is a creature demon. Pay 2 generic and a red. Menace. Goaded creatures your opponent controls can't block. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, goad target creature an opponent controls. So this deck, it seems to be... The whole point behind it is to get your opponent to attack, right? And when they goad, when creatures are goaded, they have to attack other players that are not yourself. And so it's kind of a very powerful, it's pushing them to be able to do such things. So I'm assuming a lot of stuff in here is going to be like, your opponent's going to have like death touch stuff and flying stuff, or they're going to have like a 1/5 that they're going to need to throw into something. It kind of is like, if everybody's playing the long game, this deck is how it's going to be able to push people to have to be more aggressive because of this deck. This deck makes everybody's deck aggressive, which is good and bad, depending, but it's okay. Goblin Spymaster. Looks like this is a old card from Commander 2016. First strike, at the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player creates a 1/1 red goblin creature token with creatures you control. Attack each combat if able. So, same concept, right? This guy gives your opponents 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. But they essentially make it so your creatures have to attack. So if you're trying to play the long haul, or you're trying to play something that's going to give you, a big advantage and you need it to live, you now have to attack. Unless you get rid of this goblin, which is, as long as this card's on the field, you're going to get one at the end of your end step anyway, or at the beginning of your opponent's end step. So they're going to have to figure that out pretty quick. Mocking Doppelganger. This is a new card from the Commander Legends set, or from Battle for Baldur's Gate. It's got Flash. It's a shapeshifter. And you may have Mocking Doppelganger enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature an opponent controls, except it has other creatures with the same name as this creature are goaded. So how you're going to use this is essentially, if your opponent has a very, very strong creature, like a 7/7 or a 10/10 or something, you can flash this in, and you can flash it in, make it a copy, and then block with it to essentially kill it, right? Or you can flash it on your opponent's turn, main phase before their combat, create a copy of it, and then that makes it so they'll have to attack with that creature during their combat phase. Pretty powerful, unless of course it has summoning sickness, but but that's the thing. That's kind of powerful. That's a pretty big power play right there. And for 3 and a blue, I don't know. That seems like it's going to be pretty powerful in a lot of decks. Territorial Hellkites. This is a $2 little dragon boy. 6/5 for 4. Flying in haste, and at the beginning of your combat on your turn, choose an opponent at random that this card didn't attack during your last combat. Territorial Hellkite attacks that player this combat if able. If you can't choose an opponent this way, tap Territorial Hellkite. So you have to attack with this thing. You're always attacking with it, but it's a 4-drop for a 6/5. Pretty powerful. I mean, it's just good. It's a good card. It's unfortunate that it has to attack, but it has to attack a certain player if it's able. So, again, you're essentially goading your own creatures, but with it being so incredibly strong, it's a very aggressive deck. This deck is a very aggressive deck. Vengeful Ancestor, this card was just printed in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms like a year ago, but it's got flying. And then whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, goad target creature. So you can choose and target opponent creatures to goad. Whenever a goaded creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to its controller. Again, this deck is big on goading creatures. So if there's going to be a bunch of goaded creatures, and if all creatures, if a goaded creature attacks, if your opponent has like 5 goaded creatures, it deals 5 damage to them, and you just get to benefit that, which is really cool. Bailoff Baritil. This is a new card that is in this set. No pricing yet on it, but a new legendary creature that was just announced. This one says, creatures your opponent controls with power less than Bailoff Baril's power are goaded. Whenever a goaded attacking or blocking creature dies, you create a treasure token. So that's kind of cool. That allows you to give you... It gives you treasure tokens. You know, this also helps with cards that are like... What do they call them? Mana dorks? Mana dorks are cards like Llanowar Visionary, which usually you just have on the board so you can tap it for mana. What this will do is it essentially makes it so you have to attack with that card because it will be goaded. And it will die, probably. And then when it dies, you get a treasure token. Yeah, that's kind of cool, right? So more goading, very powerful. Brash Taunter. This is something to think about because goading, they have to attack. If they attack you, right? Or if anything attacks you, this goblin here has indestructible. And then whenever it is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. So if that opponent has a 10/10 creature, and that 10/10 creature has to attack, and it attacks you, right? Which it really shouldn't, but if it attacks you, or somebody attempts to attack you, you essentially, this card won't die from damage, and then it will deal that damage to their opponent. So very powerful. You can also then have it so this card fights another creature, so you don't even have to wait for that card to be goaded. You can just pay 2 and a red to tap this, and it will fight another target creature. And when it does that, it won't die, but whatever damage it was dealt, it will be dealt to that opponent. And it says to target opponent, which means you can essentially choose. You can essentially choose whichever one. So it doesn't even have to be the opponent that the creature is that you're attacking. You can just use it on whenever. Very powerful. Very powerful stuff. Except, yeah. Yeah. That's correct. That's correct wording, I'm pretty sure. Death Kiss. This is a new card that came out in Battle for Baldur's Gate. Whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks one of your opponents, double its power until end of turn. And then you can pay XX and a red for Monstrosity X. If the creature isn't monstrous, put X +1/+1 counters on it and it becomes monstrous. When Death Kiss becomes a monstrous, goad up to X target creatures your opponent controls. Again, baiting people's cards into getting strong and then pushing into your opponent's trap, killing them, right? And it's a beholder, so that's kind of wild. Geode Rager. First strike, landfall. Its landfall abilities whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, goad each creature target player controls. Creatures attack each combat if able and attack a player other than you if able. So it seems like the entire point of this deck is to get all 3 of your opponents to fight each other. And you get all the opponents to fight each other, and then you're left standing, right? I think this is the most interesting way I've seen a red-blue Izzet deck played. So I definitely really like the idea behind it, other than the fact that it's dragon-based. Another big hitter in here, Kaiga the Tidestar. It's got flying. It's one of the old Kamigawa dragons. 5 and a blue for a 5/5 flyer. When Kaiga Tidestar dies, gain control of target creature. So you just get to own a creature. Pretty cool. Usually it's one of those things where like people are either going to want to avoid this and get like a big creature out in order to like block this from attacking, or they're going to want to try and kill it. And if they kill it, they better not have anything on their board. Otherwise, you're going to take it. But you gain control of target creature, so it doesn't even have, like, it can be any creature on the board. Pretty crazy. Niv Mizzet Parun, right? This is 3 blue, 3 red, legendary dragon, right? Niv Mizzet, the one, the only. Spell can't be countered. Flying, whenever you draw a card, Niv Mizzet Parun deals 1 damage to any target. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. Just a card you have on the field, right? This is one of those cards that you want to just keep. You don't have to attack with it. It can't be countered. And you just keep it on the board. You get tons of benefits from doing this. So anytime they cast an instant or a sorcery, you draw a card. And then when you draw that card, you deal 1 damage to any target. Bam, bam, bam. This could even be your commander if you didn't want the other guy to be your commander, the goading guy. But this is pretty cool. Drakaseth Maw of Flames. This is a 4 colorless, 3 red, 7/7 powerful dragon. Whenever Drakaseth Maw of Flames attacks, it deals 4 damage to any target and 3 damage to each of up to 2 other targets. So you could essentially deal 4 damage to one player and then 3 damage to the other 2 opponents. Or you can wipe boards, or you can do something. It's a very powerful creature. I don't know how you're going to get that out early, but very powerful. Thunder Dragon enters the battlefield, deals 3 damage to each creature without flying. So, again, red stuff. Red dragons do red dragon things. Astral Dragon's a new dragon that came out in the set. It's got flying and project image. When Astral Dragon enters the battlefield, create 2 tokens that are copies of target non-creature permanents, except they are 3/3 dragon creatures in addition to their other types, and they have flying. So this turns 2 non-creature permanents into 3/3 dragon creatures in addition to their other types, and they have flying. So you essentially get to make other people's soul rings even becomes. You can make 2 soul rings on your board that are also 3/3 dragons that are flying. Kind of insane. It's kind of expensive for 8. But it seems like it's going to have a place, especially with all the enchantments and the artifacts and the equipments and so on and so forth. Avatar of Slaughter. All creatures have double strike and attack each combat if able. This goes for all creatures. This is an all creatures thing. You might just want to play this right before you're about to go in for a kill, for the final kill. I don't know how fantastic this is going to be when just on the board by itself, but it is an 8/8 for 8. Kind of just crazy, so kind of see what happens there. Then you have your 2 planeswalkers here, Rowan and Will, both from the Battle Bond set. Rowan is +2 during target player's next turn. Each creature that player controls attacks if able. -2, Rowan Kenrith deals 3 damage to each tapped creature target. Each player. Rowan Kenrith deals 3 damage to each tapped creature target player controls. Pretty powerful. And then their -8 is target player gets an emblem with whenever you activate an ability that isn't a mana ability, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. So that's kind of crazy for abilities. And then you can partner with Will Kenrith, and this can be your commander if necessary. And then also with Will Kenrith being your commander, you're essentially still in that same color identity. So, of course, Will also has several crazy things, pretty much around the same concept, if I recall. This is just +2 until your next turn. Up to 2 target creatures each have base power and toughness 0/3 and lose all abilities. So this essentially nerfs your opponent's stuff. -2, target player draws 2 cards until your next turn. Instant, sorcery, and planeswalker spells that player casts cost 2 less to cast. So this is kind of a way to help a friend if you're trying to make a friend in the cube. And then -8, target player gets an emblem with whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. Same -8 as Rowan. So they're good, right? It's a lot of political stuff. Spectacular Showdown, another new card from Baldur's Gate. Put a double strike counter on target creature, then goad each creature that had a double strike counter put on it this way. And then if you overload it, you may cast the spell for its overloaded cost if you do change target on its text to each. So put a double strike counter on each creature, then go to each creature as that had a double strike counter put on it this way. So you can pay the 1 and red to put it on your opponent's stuff and then have it attack, or you can then overload it and make it so everything on the board has a double strike counter and is goated, much like the Avatar of Slaughter. Powerful, but that's kind of like a I want to wipe the board concept. Disrupt Decorum, a card from AFR. Goad all creatures you don't control. Pretty straightforward and easy sorcery there. Domineering Will, 3 and a blue. Target player gains control of up to 3 target non-attacking creatures until end of turn. Untap those creatures. They block this turn if able. So you essentially get to take somebody's non-attacking creatures to block with the goads and so on and so forth. It's an interesting concept. More using your opponent's stuff against themselves. Blasphemous Act. Spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. Blasphemous Act deals 13 damage to each creature. Obviously, 1 less catch for each creature on the battlefield. You're playing with 3 other players. The odds of that happening are pretty high. You could probably play this for like 2 in a red. And you can just wipe the board entirely. Very powerful. Curse of Opulence. Another very interesting card. Whenever enchanted player is... You have enchanted player, and then whenever that enchanted player is attacked, create a gold token. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. So, you essentially Curse of Opulence the biggest threat on the board. And then anytime you attack them, or another person attacks them, which all their stuff goads, so at some point they're going to want to attack them, they all get a gold token. Gold token is just a treasure. So, Artificer class, another new card for the set. Class cards came out in AFR with like Barbarian class and Bard class. So Artificer was the one class I think they were missing, and I'm happy to see it in here now. The first artifact spell you cast each turn costs 1 less to cast. And then you can level it up for 1 in a blue. When this class becomes level 2, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an artifact card. Put that card into your hand and the rest onto the bottom of your library in a random order. And then for 5 in a blue, you can level up to level 3. And then at the beginning of your end step, create a token that's a copy of target artifact you control. That's pretty powerful. That would need to be destroyed almost immediately. Because if you could imagine your opponent just keeps popping off like soul rings and all that. What other artifacts are in here even, right? Soul rings, Wayfarer's Bauble, Arcane Signets, Bloodthirsty Blades, Felwar Stones, Is It Signets, Mind Stones to draw cards, Dragon's Horde, Hedron Archive. Yeah, definitely powerful. So, very, very good. Propaganda. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. Powerful politics card. Your creatures, if you goad them, they pretty much can't attack you anyway, but if they do end up planning to attack you, they have to pay 2 for each creature, and that's a pretty big hit to them. So, very, very good card. Loot Dispute, another Battle for Baldur's Gate card. When Loot Dispute enters the battlefield, you take the initiative and create a treasure token. So that is the Undercity stuff. Whenever you attack the player who has the initiative, create a treasure token. And then Loud Ruckus. Whenever you complete a dungeon, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. So that's kind of nuts. You always take the initiative, and then essentially when somebody deals, how the initiative works is when somebody deals damage to you, they take the initiative from you. And then they can go into the dungeons in Undercity or whatever. But if you complete a dungeon, create a 5/5 red dragon creature. So there's probably some dungeoneering cards in here for sure. Castlevantrus, this is one of the lands. It's just enters the battlefield, taps. You can scry. Pretty powerful. Terrain Generator seems like it's another basic land. Add 1 to your mana pool, or you can pay 2 and tap to put a basic land card from your hand into play tapped. Allows you to play an extra land. So very much so an interesting concept. I didn't think this would kind of be the way they would go about doing it, to see like a very aggressive blue-red deck, but I'm tempted to see how it works. Unfortunately, I don't have 4 players or 3 other players to play around with, so I would never know how this works in a bigger setting, but maybe one day I'll know. Then we move on to the Mind Flayers, which is another, looks like $213 if you buy all the cards. But obviously, like I said, those prices are not correct. Or won't be correct, I should say, when the sets come out. Because you can buy this for $45. So, Mind Flayers is a black-blue deck. If I were to guess, I think this is probably mill or destruction and like control stuff. So we're going to go over the commander, and then obviously any card over $2 is generally a card to look at. It's probably $2 or higher because it is good and not because it's rare. So that's kind of the concept. But Hullbreaker Horror I already see. That's very interesting to see a reprint of that. Let's see. Memory Plunder from the Catacombs. See, a lot of these cards are probably reprints that I should be like, whoa, I'm freaking the heck out because of these. But I really don't... I really don't know what they've been reprinted from. So I'm kind of just going off of what I know and hoping that I'm correct in my judgment. All right. A lot of these enchantments very powerful. I think just about every one of these enchantments is over $2. Any lands that are crazy? River of Tears. And a Tainted Isle. All right. So go ahead and start with the commander here, Captain Ngathrod. Or it's probably Ngathrod. Not sure how exactly that all works, but essentially, it looks like he's a 3 colorless, blue and black, legendary creature, horror pirate. Horrors you control have menace. Whenever a horror you control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. At the beginning of your end step, choose target artifact or creature in an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn. Put it onto the battlefield under your control. That's actually really good. This is almost a more powerful Anawan deck. Anawan the Ruin Thief was a... was he Commander Legends or Zendikar Rising? I think he was Commander Legends. He was a Commander Legends Precon deck. And this was the exact same concept. He was a rogue, and whenever a rogue dealt combat damage to a player, that player milled that many cards based on how much damage they were dealt, right? So, very powerful. This is also going to be kind of a pain in the butt to go against. Hunted Horror from Ravnica. When Hunted Horror enters the... It's got Trample, right? Two black for a 7/7. So it's gotta not be crazy. Trample. When Hunted Horror enters the battlefield, target opponent creates 2 3/3 green centaur creature tokens with protection from black. So they're able to block, or you're not able to kill them, I should say. So you can block with the centaurs, but you're very powerful. You could also kill the centaurs doing something else. So I'm sure there's a way to get rid of those. Spellskite, an artifact creature horror. It does say Phyrexian horror over here. I'm not sure why it doesn't say that on the card. But you can pay... Oh, I guess that's because it's got the Phyrexian mana. So you can pay 1 blue or a life, or 2 life, I should say. And you can change a target of target spell or ability to Spellskite. So, kind of interesting. Allows you to kind of negate spells in a way, or, you know, change the target of spells. Very powerful. Abolith Spawn is a new card from Battle for Baldur's Gate. It's got Flash, Ward 2, and Probing Telepathy. Whenever a creature entering the battlefield under an opponent's control causes a triggered ability of that creature to trigger, you may copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So just another kind of like take your opponent's stuff and then use it for yourself. Okay, got it. Ukulan, a crab ooze horror. Ukulan's power is equal to the number of crabs, oozes, and or horrors you control. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to one target creature card from an opponent's graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of Ukulan. That's really powerful. That's really powerful. Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's got to get off the board immediately. Nemesis of Reason, a Leviathan horror. Whenever Nemesis of Reason attacks, defending player mills 10 cards. They don't even have to deal damage. You just have to be attacked. And defending player mills 10 cards. It's a 3/7 for 5. So, like, you can just block it, right? But they have to mill 10 cards, which is very powerful. Hullbreaker Horror. Cost 7 for a 7/8. It's got Flash, and it can't be countered. When you cast a spell, choose up to 1. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand. And return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So, very powerful to kind of get stuff out of the way. Drown and Lock. This is a counter, but it's probably one of the more powerful counters because it only costs 1 blue, 1 black. And you counter target spell with mana value less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard, or destroy target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of cards in controller's graveyard. With a mill deck, you're going to be expecting your opponents to have a lot of cards in their graveyard, so you can pretty much counter anything. It's pretty counter or destroy anything. Pretty good. Pull from Tomorrow, draw X cards, then discard a card. That's pretty good. 2 blue and an X. You can draw like 5 cards and just have to discard 1. That's a pretty great way to refresh your hand. Memory Plunder. You can pay 4 blue, 4 black, or a combination of both. It's an instant. You may cast target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. Wow, is that really good? That allows you to kind of just pick and choose what you want to use. You get to use your opponent's deck against them, which is nice. This is a good deck to put like Xanathar in or something. From the Catacombs, a sorcery from Battle for Baldur's Gate. Return target creature card from a graveyard to the battlefield with a corpse counter on it. If that creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. You take the initiative. And then you can escape this card. You exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. You're just allowed to bring back stuff, right? From the grave. So very powerful. I could see that being used a lot. Although for 5, and then 5 and exiling 5 other cards from your graveyard, you're probably going to have to mill yourself at that rate. But we'll see what happens, I guess. Curtain's Call. 5 and a black. Undaunted. Spell costs 1 less to cast for each opponent. So at least 2 and a black. Destroy 2 target creatures. Pretty good for 3. Psionic Ritual, a new card from Baldur's Gate. Replicate, tap an untapped horror you control. When you cast the spell, copy it for each time you paid its replicate cost. You may choose new targets for the copies. So so in order to replicate this, you can tap an untapped horror you control. And then exile target instant and or sorcery card from a graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Exile Psionic Ritual. If you have, like, a shock or something, you could essentially just untap or tap all of your untapped horrors. Let's say you have, like, 10. You can essentially just copy shock. You can do it for a bunch of other stuff, too. You can shock, like, other resurrection spells. You essentially just get to use your opponent's graveyard against them. which is very powerful. So that's good. I like that. Lightning Greaves, a very, very good equipment card. Equipped creature has haste and shroud, can't be target of spells or abilities. Equip 0. Lightning Greaves is a very, very good card in Voltron decks. Voltron decks essentially run around the idea that your commander is the only one who's really going to be dealing damage to your opponent, because Voltron rules are that if your commander does 21 or more damage to your opponent, then you win. You don't have to do all 40 damage. You just need to do 21 throughout the span of the game, and you win. So Lightning Greaves is a very powerful thing for that. Mindcrank. Whenever an opponent loses life, that player puts that many cards from the top of their library into their graveyard. Wow. So mill everything and everyone. The artifact. Pretty crazy. Talisman of Dominance. Add that, or you can add this. The talismans are from older sets, getting reprints again. So those are at least nice, different mana rock ideas. Thought Vessel, you have no maximum hand size. This is great for just being able to draw stuff in blue. And you can add one to your mana pool. Herald's Horn, I believe this is a huge, huge, huge reprint. Like a great reprint. Because as Herald's Horn enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creature spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card of the chosen type, you may reveal it and put it to your hand. So you can just say horror. So this is just essentially a horror tribal deck with a mill mechanic. Kind of interesting. I think it's very cool. But Herald's Horn having the reprint and guarantee in here, very cool. I like playing tribal, so it's nice to see that in there. Endless Evil, a new card from Baldur's Gate. Enchanted creature you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted creature, except the token is 1/1. When enchanted creature dies, if that creature was a horror, return Endless Evil to its owner's hand. Pretty good. So you essentially can just create a horror. You can create a copy of a horror that has some kind of ability to buff all your stuff, right? And then you can just keep that going, and then if it dies, if it was a horror, you bring this card back, and then you can just equip it to a different creature. Very cool, very powerful. Haunted One, another new card from Baldur's Gate. This is your background. Commander creatures you own have, whenever this creature becomes tapped, it and other creatures you control that share a creature type with it each get +2/+0 and gain Undying until the end of turn. When a creature with Undying dies, if it had no +1/+1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. This essentially allows you to go in for your commander stuff and attack, and gives yourself Undying. You get to go all in and then benefit. Very good. An enchantment, Leyline of Anticipation. If Leyline of Anticipation is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. You may cast spells as though they had flash. Fantastic way to start your opening hand. Very cool. I like that concept a lot. Very neat. Black Market. An enchantment, whenever a creature dies, put a charge counter on Black Market. Then at the beginning of your pre-combat phase, add black for each charge counter on Black Market. Crazy. I mean, it costs 5, but a lot of creatures are going to be dying in blue-black. So, very cool. River of Tears is the land in here. Add blue to your mana pool. If you played a land this turn, add black to your mana pool instead. I mean, I don't know if I love that, but I guess you can use it for whatever. It is technically dual. And then for the last card, the Tainted Isle. Same deal. Activate only if you control a swamp. You can add a blue or a black. And then you can add colorless regularly. So, Mind Flayers seems very good. These are very well thought out decks, I must say. I personally think I love the idea of Draconic Descent. Not just because I like dragons, but the idea of all 3 of my opponents fighting each other while I just kind of sit back and watch. Sounds pretty fun to me. Exit from Exile, not my favorite. I don't really like putting things in exile and then like having to look at them and then being able to play them, so on and so forth. But the idea is there, and it can make your stuff pretty powerful. It's Gruul. Gruul goes big and does a lot of damage, so I can't say it's ever going to be bad, but it's a fantastic deck. And then Party Time is I'm debating, right? I like the idea behind Mind Flayers. And Party Time, I'm trying to figure out which one is my second favorite. I honestly think Mind Flayers is probably my second favorite. Party Time would be my third favorite. And then Exit from Exile, my fourth. Because obviously, right, party mechanic is very, very cool, but you need to have all four out of there. And if you can't get something that allows all of your creatures to be all creature types, then you lose out on that party mechanic, and that's unfortunate. And then, of course, the Mind Flayer stuff is all horrors. It's just a bunch of horror cards. So very, very cool to see all of these. This is a deck my girlfriend would play for sure. She loves the horror concept. And so this might be something she even plays. See whether or not she gets into this. But that's pretty much it, right? We're kind of going over this and double checking and making sure everything's set, but yeah, that is my hour-and-a-half long review of all of the stuff, a deep, deep dive into the Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate Precons, the Precon decks. If I recall correctly, I believe you can actually get all 4 of the Precon decks on pre-order right now. I know normally I don't say pre-order stuff, right? Obviously, you know, you guys know me. I don't want to pre-order singles, right? But pre-ordering this, it looks like currently it's $150. You can pre-order a set of 4 of them for. If each one goes for $45 MSRP, rough it up to maybe like even just an estimated $50 after tax, you're still getting a deck for free by paying $149 for all 4 of them. So very, very cool. I'm definitely going to pick one up. This is going to be a very powerful set. I wouldn't be surprised if this is maybe one of the more powerful sets of Commander Precons. The new Capenna ones were kind of okay, but they were very themed into the triple color family aspect of stuff, whereas these are very much so almost tribal in a sense. They follow one mechanic and they dive deep into that specific mechanic, and they really make it feel like their own. And they have newer cards, so who knows? But anyway, yeah, that's it for me. I've exhausted my resources and I've exhausted my voice, because boy howdy is this a lot of talking. You guys can tell I do like talking. I like talking a lot. But that's it for me. Hopefully you guys learned something. I'm not sure whether or not it was a learning process or it was just like an idea. I'll leave the link to this specific website in the description below, so that way you guys can all go to this exact same website and check out everything that's in here for yourself, right? And while you're in there, while you're down in that description area, we do also have a Patreon that you guys can sign up for. Patrons get fun things like entries into box battles and box breaks and giveaways and My Undying Love. I don't know, that's not worth too much these days, but like there's that. There's also the easy thing of just hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel. I'm always happy to have new people here, and I'm happy to have everybody kind of enjoy this TCG world we live in. I know Yu-Gi-Oh's going through its stuff, and Magic's going through its stuff, and we're gonna hopefully hit our 3rd TCG to cover sometime soon here. But generally, just wanted to kind of keep an idea of how this works. But this is probably just gonna be a raw footage straight through of just me going through each of these decks and kind of showing you what they hold. So thank you all so much for watching. I do really appreciate your support. Again, like I said, please make sure to like the video and also subscribe to the channel as well if you have not already. I like to make all this content for everybody so that way we kind of see eye to eye in regards to what is what's out there, right? A lot of the stuff, you may see a card has a very high price, but might not know what that means for the deck, right? What it means for the deck to use this thing. So, obviously, that's where I'm hoping to help. And hopefully I did. So, thank you again. Please, please, please make sure to drink your water, eat your vegetables, and don't be a dick. And I will see you all in the next video. All right, everybody. Nerd out.